worries.
Yeah. Okay, so Neeti Sharma, thank you so much for coming on here with us on at LEARNTech Asia for the Women in Learning series. Let's just dive right in. In your experience, what are the opportunities and challenges of reskilling and upskilling women in this, this current workplace or for the future of work? Challenges and opportunities.
Sure. So for any organization, Michelle, success is possible only when women are full partners at their workplaces. Companies who adopt a more holistic view of diversity, equity, inclusion can actually build a more collaborative workforce, which then on helps them to increase productivity and bring in better business results. And that's where the opportunity to reskill and upskill women for today's and tomorrow's roles exist. I mean, it's huge. Learning should not definitely be restricted to just new technologies or new products that are launched. Women should be skilled on digital, financial, managerial skills, along with, of course, technical skills required for them to do their jobs. This will also ensure that they're better prepared for future leadership roles and have a growth plan chalked out for themselves. Reskilling also offers a very exciting strategy. We were mentioning about women working from home right now, and COVID in a way has been a leveler where a lot of women actually have not been able to continue work for personal reasons. Right now, reskilling these women, bringing them back into formal employment is a huge opportunity for us. Of course, we know even before the pandemic, there have been women who have actually stopped working in middle of their career due to whatever reasons. They may have to take a child break, help aging parents, or do whatever is required on the domestic front. But the dropout ratio of women workforce currently, especially because of the pandemic, is much more higher than men. Actually, I think it's about 1.8 times higher than the dropout ratio of men, purely because of the way pandemic has hit our industries. And the pace to change skills is much slower in women than it is with men, purely because of the opportunities that they don't get to upskill or reskill themselves. So targeting reskilling for these women who want to come back to active workforce is itself a huge opportunity. And and just giving them this first step, I think companies can just expand their talent pool rather than searching or restricting themselves to a limited set of people. So I believe personally, huge opportunity, lots of things to do. Lot of women were one willing to come back to active workforce. Too many of them have lost employment opportunities specifically because of COVID and the pandemic, the way it's hit. I mean, retail got hit, entertainment industry got hit. There are so many industries that got hit. And I think if you're able to skill and upskill women and bring them back into these active job roles, the opportunity is massive.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you're saying is so true. I think, when I was kind of doing a little bit of the research for this, it said that about 50 plus something percent of people who were either furloughed or laid back as a result of the pandemic were women. But the reality is that women only make up about 30 odd percent of the
Yes.
global workforce. And that's
India
insane
is
to
much
hear.
lower. It's
Yeah.
about 20%. So it's
Mm-hmm.
so much more lower. And
Mm-hmm.
there, if the dropout ratios of women are higher than it is from the male counterparts,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, then 22, 23, we will see the number of women participation in the labor workforce will be much lower.
Yeah, that's right. And you also mentioned about how that the industries that women are in, they're so heavily affected by the pandemic, the retail, the entertainment industry. And then another one is that because of the need to kind of develop the digital side, the digital technology because of the pandemic, then I think one of the other reports also came out and said that most of the automated work and most of the digitized work are currently being held by women. Like majority of those are being held by women. So then women are either being replaced or they need to actually be given the opportunity to reskill or upskill their digital or technical
Yeah.
skills.
Kill them.
Yeah. I mean, what in your opinion,
I
yeah.
believe, sorry, I'll just add, I believe that women should be given digital skills. They have to have to be given financial skills and managerial skills. So as they grow up the ranks, they are actually becoming more rounded leaders rather than just restricting themselves to one area of expertise. because that way, we will have more and more women leaders in an organization, which is not happening at an entry level. We still see a lot of women participate,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but as you go up to the higher up in the pyramid, the number of
Yeah.
women in the top is very, very few.
Yeah, that's so
And that's
true.
purely because mid-career, I may have other responsibilities to
Mm-hmm.
take care of. I don't have help. So let me
Yeah.
just drop out from active workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and then try and do other things. But
Yeah.
also to your point, Michelle, I think it's very interesting the kind of opportunities that companies are now coming out with.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, this whole thing about the gig economy,
Mm-hmm.
it's improving, it's increasing leaps and bounds, it's going across
Yeah.
industries. And I think women can actually or should take advantage of this structure
Mm-hmm.
that companies are adopting. So it's
Yeah.
almost like I may want to work on my terms. I may want to work for
Mm-hmm.
4 hours a day or 5 hours a
Mm-hmm.
day and not work 9 hours. So I can actually balance between my family life and my workplace. So
Yeah.
I think that's again a huge opportunity for us.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I know that this is like not a question that I shared with you earlier on, but you were talking about how a lot of women, when they more there are a lot of women who enter jobs into the workforce, but then when it comes to kind of like the mid-level, you start to see them kind of disappearing because of a lot of times
Yeah,
it's because of household family reasons. I'm
yeah.
wondering, what is your opinion or like your experience with how companies can do a better job at kind of maybe assisting them with the care economy, because I
Yeah.
think one economy that is growing is the care economy, the realization how important it is.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts about that, about what organizations can do better in this particular perspective?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think given the fact that we need and we have to get more and more women to continue working for a long time,
Mhm,
I think the way we create our workplace environment is very, very critical.
mhm,
We have to sensitize all managers and supervisors on
mhm.
how do they deal with women employees or team members,
Yeah.
right? Rather, so just typically an example, right? I've finished a meeting at about 8 in the evening. Oh, let's go out for a drink.
Mhm.
And if the women says, no, I can't go, and then you're not very happy as a manager saying, oh, she refused,
Mhm.
she's not able to
Yeah.
participate, so she is not a collaborative worker. But that may
Mhm.
not be true. She may have some other reasons why she may want to get back home. So
Yep.
I think sensitizing managers, supervisors is extremely critical,
Mhm.
right? So that it's really not just the top leading this particular thing. It's a whole culture that at a
Yeah.
workplace we have to create, right? Mobility, work hours, I mean,
Mhm.
all of those we have to be very sensitive about. Okay, if somebody may want to start work at 7 in the morning and finish at 4 because probably the child comes back from school, I
Mhm.
think as organizations we should have that kind of flexibility,
Yeah.
right? Of course, remove the gender pay gap. I mean, it's a big problem, and I think it's a topic that we should talk about at
Yeah.
some other time. But it exists, and it exists
Mhm.
in probably one of few of the largest organizations one could speak
Mhm.
about. I think
Yeah.
that is the other thing that one has to look at. uh, the third aspect that I would like to put across is that I think we should have mentors for people across all levels, not just
Yes.
women, but men, women. But I think if women have mentors, right, they could actually decide the let's say their career paths. They could
Mhm.
decide what they need to do, what they don't need to do.
Yeah.
How do they prepare themselves for future roles, right? So I think hand holding is also very important.
Mhm.
The next aspect that I would put is actually every organization should have a zero tolerance policy against harassment. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of women actually step back saying, "Oh, I can't work." And I know it may not be true in many companies, but it's
Mhm.
definitely true in India that a girl
Mhm.
cannot travel 15 kilometers, 20
Right.
kilometers after dark because of
Mhm.
safety issues,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or if she stays back at work, what will the employees say,
Mhm.
what will my co-workers speak, what will my
Mhm.
family and society speak. So I think if
Yeah.
you have these no tolerance policies, if you're able to provide options of travel,
Mhm.
safe travel, right, then I mean, then who's stopping women? And I know Singapore is probably one of the safest countries. So I remember I was there, I don't know how many decades ago, and at 4 in the morning, 4, 5
Mhm.
of us were happily roaming around, and that is so unheard of
In
in a country
India.
like India. But
Yeah.
it's not just restricted to India. I mean, even
Mhm.
parts of the US.
Yep.
parts of Africa, parts of
Yeah.
Australia. I mean, of course, the Asian countries, needless to say, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
create that culture which is very, very safe for
Yep.
women. And like I said, I think I'm really speaking from the perspective of being in India.
Mm-hmm.
And last, like I mentioned, I think help employees strike a work-life balance.
Yeah.
If we're able to give those opportunities to women, there'll be
Mm-hmm.
many who will come into the workforce.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in a way, if you look at all our organizations are struggling to hire talent.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
keep saying we don't have people, I don't know where to go, I'm not getting a good salesperson, I'm not getting a good tech person. But then we are not expanding our talent pool. We're restricting our talent pool to probably more men than women. And
Mm-hmm.
it may not be a conscious decision, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just the way we have been oriented and we are thinking.
Yeah, that's true. I think like another one is also maybe not just gender itself, but when we look at somebody's CV, we always wonder like, oh, if somebody has such a huge gap, then we're like, oh no, that doesn't mean, that kind of like hints at something that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or also, I think there's this growing realization that yes, certificates are important because they really do open the doors, but there's a huge difference between having a certificate and having that willingness to learn, because you need to identify whether is it women or men. You need to identify people, future employees or potential employees, who are willing to learn and explore and kind of like expand their skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
also when women come back from a break, for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reasons they would have taken a break, right? I mean, they got married, they had to change cities, so they had to leave jobs, child break, whatever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When they come back after break, we always believe that they're not skilled enough for our current role.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
end up starting from much lower salary,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is again not right.
Mm-hmm.
A gap is okay, but then they are also willing to upskill themselves. They probably
Yes.
are willing to work much more harder to prove
Mm-hmm.
themselves. I
Yeah.
think you have to give that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen when we've got such women back into active workforce, Michelle, they stay back much, much longer than men.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain roles where you cannot actually have men. I mean, customer service, for example, relationship. I think women are far ahead in maintaining relationship and men. So I'm not
Yeah.
typecasting, but it's
No,
true.
no.
But
Yeah.
it's
Better
so
communicators.
absolutely, and the
Yeah.
patience level. So obviously there are pros and cons of
Mm-hmm.
when you take a male member vis-a-vis a female member. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying giving these opportunities and being open to the idea of taking women across segments, I think
Yeah.
is very, very critical.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think they're a lot more sincere because they have to prove a point. They have come back after a break, so they're really enjoying working. So
Yeah.
it's everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
true.
about giving them an opportunity.
In regards to like women who are coming back after a gap for whatever the reason is, you mentioned about companies or like the opportunity for them to upskill or reskill whatever talents that is needed or whatever skills that are needed. Would you say that the women should, before applying for jobs, that they should find the opportunities themselves to reskill? Or should it be that
Yes.
the companies that want to hire them should provide those opportunities, or kind of like a mix of both? What do you think is like the
I
better?
think it has
Yeah.
to be both.
Mm-hmm. It should
I
be
mean,
both.
I
Yeah.
think women who really really want to come back, or women who are
Yeah.
looking for a growth in their career, I think we also have to show initiative.
Yeah.
We can't just keep depending on our employers to make investments on us. I mean, if we
Yeah.
are not able to make investments, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whether we are on a break, or even let's say today, if I want to move from where I am to the next level,
Yeah.
the skill sets required will be very different from what I have today.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why don't I analyze what the gap is and start filling the gap in my skills?
Yeah.
So I think upskilling and reskilling yourself has to actually come in from within.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect somebody else to pay for our education all the time.
Yeah.
And
That's
again,
true.
I'm sorry, but it's a mentality that,
Mm-hmm.
earlier, let's say in some cases, and I know Singapore also, the government does great amount of work on education
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and skilling and vocational skilling. In India, that's not true. We pay our way through on private education because the public education is not as strong as it should be. It's
Right.
getting there. It's moving the needle, but it's going to take a long time. We've paid
Mm-hmm.
through private colleges, we've gone through private schools. And so once I get a job, then I'm done. I mean, now somebody else will pay for my skilling. So you can't have that attitude. I mean, whether
Yeah.
whether you are actively working or you're taking a break, you
Mm-hmm.
have to continuously keep finding out what are my skill gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, in the learning, industry, we use the word TNA, right? So the training
Yes. Yeah.
analysis.
Yeah.
So why should the TNA be only a learning and development professional's job?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I mean, so let's say, for example, I want to use public speaking as a skill for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I may not be confident, I may not be very good with the subject that I want to speak on, or I may not just have the command on the language that I'm going to use. So if I know these are my skill gaps, then I have to work on filling those skill gaps.
Yep. Correct.
Because
Agree.
again, I mean, those are skills that I identify that I need
Yeah.
to be able
Mm-hmm.
to move ahead
Yeah, that's so true. I think like it always starts from the
within.
individual themselves, yeah, from within itself. Yeah. How do you think like what kind of learning style would you think is best, especially for women who are in the workforce or re-entering or entering the workforce, would it be like you, because we have so many different types of like learning, online learning right now. We
Yeah.
have asynchronous, we have synchronous and all. What do you
Yeah.
think is the best way or the most optimal way to kind of upskill and reskill while you're at work, while the woman is at work? Yeah.
See, globally, the completion rates of self-learning or online learning courses is very low. I mean, probably gone from 4% last decade to about 15-16% this decade,
Mhm,
right? And it's purely because of the way we are wired. We are tuned very
mhm.
differently. We need somebody to tell us what to do. We've
Yeah.
always been taught like that, right? So it's not very different.
Mhm.
So I think the best way, and of course, if somebody can self-learn, it's a great opportunity. I mean, there's so much of content available right now,
Mhm, mhm.
right, on the internet, so much of free content available right now
Yeah.
that one can read. But
Mhm.
I'm not sure what percentage of people are able to actually spend that much time to search and
Yeah.
then learn, right? In that case, I think a combination of asynchronous and synchronous learning is important.
Mm.
We may not be able to do 100% classroom or even
Yeah.
physical, digital classroom, because we may not have the time. I mean,
Yeah.
after 8 or 9 hours of work, I may not have the energy to probably sit back and listen to somebody for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
May not have the patience, forget the time or the
Mhm.
money, right?
Yeah.
So I think a combination is the best thing, that you still have a trainer, a faculty
Mhm.
telling you what to read, how to read, and how to learn. But there's so much of content that you can actually consume yourself,
Mhm.
and then put it in practice. If you're working actively, obviously you can use it at your workplace. If
Yeah.
you're not doing it, then you try working with other people on some projects and things like that.
Mhm.
But in a way, a combination of physical classroom or digital classroom, so an instructor led learning,
Mhm.
some sort of self learning, but also a lot of hands on learning, or in our parlance, the on the job learning, right? So
Yes.
OJT. So it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter that whether you're an entry level workforce or you're a mid level or you're leadership. I mean, a combination of more than 2 or 3 classrooms is very important for us to learn,
Mhm.
right? And that's where your efficacy of learning improves the best.
That's true. I mean, like all that you're saying is it's so true. It reminds me about the classes that I've like taken and have not completed as
See, there you go.
yeah. I think kind of like to end our little conversation here, I've got two more questions. I know you mentioned this already. Digital, financial, and managerial skills are
Right,
like really essential.
right.
Um, do you have any other skills, maybe another one or two more skills that are very specific to help women develop and to be more competitive and adaptable in the future of work, regardless of whether they're employed, self-employed, or seeking employment?
Sure. So I think developing strategies is very, very important for all of us, not just
Mhm.
women. Communication skills. I used the term public speaking in previously, but
Yeah.
I think communications, relationship development,
Mhm.
business development are skills, project management skills, right? So these are
Mhm.
skills that actually hold us good across industries and across job roles.
Yeah, agreed.
So
Yeah.
I did mention the digital,
Yeah.
financial, and managerial, but if you ask me to add, I would say probably communications,
Sure.
relationship skills, business
Mm-hmm.
development, sales skills, right?
Yeah.
And project management skills are equally important for anyone to grow.
Yeah, agree. I think that regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, those are really really important skills to obviously have to develop. And
Yeah.
the last one, what does the future of work look like for women? What do you think work
Mhm.
really looks like?
So, obviously, I think it's going to be hybrid. it cannot be all, and I think not for some time soon. I don't think we're all going back to
Mm-hmm.
100% workplace at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We are also aware that because the job loss for women have been much more during the pandemic
Yeah.
than men,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now workplaces are adopting a hybrid work environment where
Mm-hmm.
we see at least a 40% rise in the number of opportunities that can be made available for women.
Wow.
Okay,
Okay.
I believe work from home flexibility, will continue for at least the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
It has obviously helped all of us, men, women,
Yeah.
kids going to school. We're able to balance our personal work, family commitments.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, it has its own challenges. It's not as rosy and fancy as it sounds, but at least we know we actually went through it together. We were all within one place. So clearly, hybrid
Mm-hmm.
working along with remote working is the way forward, right?
Yeah.
We may of course have to look at how are we prepared for any crisis. I mean, like we
Mm.
started discussing early on, that we weren't prepared. I mean, this pandemic
Yeah.
hit us in our face, right? And we didn't know what to do. So the first few months were really trying to grapple with life and the changes.
Mm-hmm.
But the second and the third wave, especially in India, actually did not have the kind of impact the way the first wave had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think mentally we were prepared, employers,
Yeah.
employees, all of us were prepared, saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I mean, now it's becoming a way of life. So I think the flexibility, working from home, hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
like we were saying, few days at work, few days at
Yeah.
home, or few hours at work, few hours at home, right? Is great.
Mm-hmm.
Also the use of technology. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to achieve whatever we did globally if
Mm-hmm.
it was not for the technology platforms that we are using even today,
Yep.
right? So I think hybrid work, balance between work and life is very, very critical for women
Yeah.
working from anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessary that I'm fixed to a particular location,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And I see more and more employers now actually trying to offer flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So just give a case in point in India. I mean, a lot of schools have actually not reopened physically,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
purely because kids are not vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
There is a risk for them to get back to school. So we actually haven't asked women who have small children going to
Mm.
school to come back to work
Right. Okay.
physically,
Yeah.
because we know that they can't leave
Yeah.
kids back home alone
Yeah.
and come to office.
Mm-hmm.
So just a case in point, I think a lot of employers are thinking like that.
Yeah.
And I think this is how it's going to be for future, at least for the
Mm-hmm.
next few years, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I think like although this has been, it's not a long conversation, but everything that you have said so far is just like it sounds exactly like what I have been reading, and it's very affirming or reassuring to hear that, all the way in Singapore and you in India, we're all kind of like going through the same thing. So
Same
it's not,
thing.
the idea here was really because I think we had this conversation also about like, oh,
Yeah.
like your background or your knowledge will be a bit more India based, but the reason for us to have this conversation is to kind of really show that women across Asia are going through very, very similar situations. I mean,
Absolutely.
even before at the start of this conversation, we were already talking about how the
Yes.
way we talk to one another nowadays
Yeah,
and all.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's also true because I mean, okay, at least in India, I know we do get a lot of house help.
Mm-hmm,
Most other
mm-hmm.
countries, you don't have that kind of help.
Yeah, that's
So it
true.
makes it all the more difficult to do everything at home,
Mm-hmm.
right? Complete
Yeah.
work, take care of kids, or kids are not going to school. So,
Mm-hmm.
and like for us, let's say in India, when the online schools are happening, and if you have kids till probably class 3 or class 4, one parent had to necessarily sit next to the student.
Yes. Yeah, that's
So you're
right.
spending that kind of time because obviously the child cannot learn on his or her
Mm-hmm.
own.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so much happening right now. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think the way we're living has changed completely. For
Yeah.
good, I hope. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
things will be fine. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Nettie, for taking the time out, and just sharing with us.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.